Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this delightful day. You have joined Science Shuffling the Deck, How IoT Fits into Your Organization webinar, and we hope you enjoy it. We'll go ahead and get started here. Just as a reminder, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and put them in the chat box session, and we will be providing the material at the end, a copy of the recording and the material PDF of what we're going to be covering today. So we hope you enjoy it and look forward to the conversation over the next hour.
Great. Well, it's good to see all of the attendee list growing here as we're getting started. This is the second webinar in our 3-webinar series around IoT. This is specifically addressing organizations and how you can set yourself up organizationally for success in IoT. If you did not make the first webinar, you can definitely get a recording of it from the Scient.com webpage. There should be kind of a splash screen right when you log into Scient.com, and you should find that event page pretty easily, and you can register to get a recording of the first webinar. So thanks again for joining, everybody. What we're going to touch on today is really, like I said, around the organizational things we need to do to ensure IoT success. We're going to talk a little bit about what organizations with successful IoT solutions look like, how we at Scient define maturity in IoT, and what constitutes a successful IoT implementation. So to break that down a little bit more, the topics we're going to touch on specifically today, we're going to introduce ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about that maturity model. Touch on how IoT isn't easy, and kind of look at it from a different perspective there. We've got 3 interesting organizational case studies around IoT to walk you through, and we're going to talk a little bit about your readiness for IoT and how to assess that. So my name is Matt Winkler. I am the Chief Digital Solutions Architect for Scient's Industrial Energy Natural Resources Business Unit. And what that means to me is I am the link between our customers' business problems and the technical solutions that Scient can provide in that digital transformation space.
And good afternoon. My name is Sean Otto. I go ahead and lead the business development for Scient's Advanced Analytics team, the AI and machine learning aspect of it, once you're done with that technical stuff, you've got the data up in the cloud, you've gathered it. How do you move forward with that data? How do you create value out of it and transform your business at the end of the day, leveraging the IoT offerings that are available? Who is Scient? Just a brief teaser slide here as to who we are. We are a technical expertise, domain knowledge all around engineering services at the end of the day. We've been in business for about 25 years. We help companies in designing their products. We help companies from the build side of it. And we also help companies operate and maintain their services. We do a lot of different things with many companies across the world. We probably have touched a variety of pieces of technology and equipment that you use today. On top of all of that is the digital ecosystem, the digital transformations that companies face today. And we go ahead and help companies integrate and consult with them on how to do Internet of Things, the AI analytics side of that, and even into the augmented and virtual reality side of things, where companies are looking at how to leverage technology to train their employees and better interact with the physical world through the virtual medium that we have today. To start off, I'd like to go ahead and ask a polling question, help understand who we have in the audience today. This one, if you participated last time, might seem a little bit familiar, but we're going to ask the question, how far along is your organization on the IoT connectivity journey? And there's 5 answers here. Are you just starting to think about it and its implications? Are you currently doing a POC? Have you actually done a successful POC? Are you planning to launch something in the next 12 months? And do you actually have products in the marketplace that are generating revenue today? So we'll throw up that poll so that you can go ahead and select your answer. And let's go ahead and take a look at those poll results.
All right, looks like we've got a fair amount of respondents that are just kind of starting to think about IoT and its implications. pretty big majority there. So I think it's helpful for us to kind of phrase maybe the rest of the content in this webinar around that kind of a place that you guys are at in your connectivity journey. So those of you that had attended the first webinar are going to find this slide familiar, but we do want to go back to it just to make sure that we're all kind of speaking the same language here. So from our perspective, IoT is creating human value out of the digital world, and that really starts with that data sensing side, getting that data from the outside world and digitizing it, getting it to a place where it can be transferred somewhere, stored, analytics can be done on it, value can be created from that, and then beyond just simple value, creating value that humans can act on, humans can interact with, understand, and utilize. And it's that human value that we think is probably the biggest part of why IoT is so newsworthy today, why it's such a trend today. And really, to get human value out of IoT, you need human participation to make it successful. And you know, that human participation comes from how you organize yourself to create that connectivity. And to successfully do that, you need to have a certain maturity level. You need to make sure that you've got the right balance between knowledge and execution of all of the things that build an IoT solution. From our perspective, defining maturity in IoT is really about measuring your readiness of the 5 different parts of an IoT solution. Being organized, being ready from the hardware network perspective, being ready from the cloud, software, and security side, being ready from the analytics and consumption side, and being ready to support and maintain your connectivity solution long term. I think it's really easy to see those middle 3, the hardware, software, analytics, the technology part of IoT as maybe the first thought as to how mature is my organization in IoT, how well can we do those 3 things. But today we're here to talk a little bit about the first and the fifth, organizational readiness and how ready you are from an organizational perspective to support your connectivity solution long term. They may not be thought about quite as often when IoT comes up because it really is a technology solution. But I think those are the 2 to really focus on today. So, is your business ready for IoT? We think it definitely is. Maybe you aren't ready for IoT, but your business is. I think your markets are demanding it to stay competitive, to stay innovative in whatever domain that you're working in. You know, we've said before that IoT is a journey. We're definitely sticking with that sentiment here, because truly it's a challenge for enterprises on the technology side, but just as strongly it's a challenge on that management side. How do you build a governance around it, and how do you manage it? And that's all part of that journey.
Now let's take a little step back. There's a lot of information out there around IoT, a lot of ideas, a lot of blogs, a lot of people, thought leaders, opinion leaders around IoT, what it can do. And it ranges across from specifically looking at sensors and how you source sensors all the way out to the AI side of things, to the big data and the cloud, to integrations with other systems out there. But the question is, how successful are we at this? Because it is still fairly new, and we're all good at the technology. We can all put things together. We can understand it conceptually. I liken this a little bit to rocket science. We all understand how to get rockets in the air. We put enough thrust behind a rocket, the rocket goes up, the thrust goes down. We've conquered Newton, and things go up into space. You know, we can all talk about that conceptually, but when it comes down to actually putting a rocket together and launching it up into space, and even going to the point of bringing it back down, there's a lot of complexity there that I think is oftentimes overlooked. And Cisco, about a year ago, put out an interesting press release. It's actually a research paper that they did. They surveyed 1,800 business leaders, And from there, they found out that about 3/4 of IoT projects fail. Now, that's not a good investment strategy at the end of the day. And when your leaders are looking to invest monies and significant time and resources into this, the real question is, how are we going to be successful? And that's the purpose of the webinar series that we have today. And one of the core things around what we're talking about here is how can you set yourself up for success? One of the things that they identified for success was that you needed to involve people and relationships. And that had core three areas around it. One was a collaboration between IT and the business. And I was recently talking with a customer as they were looking at putting some IoT around their manufacturing stuff. And they had done a small little skunkworks project. And then IT got wind of it. And they're like, wait a minute, you have all these security holes on what you're doing. Please talk to us so we can help you and enable you on that side of things. And, we're happy to dig in, but we need to have the cross collaboration and communication, particularly between IT and the business. We also need to have a technology focused culture. How do we go ahead and establish jargon, vocabulary, a culture around technology? And for some of these companies, that is quite difficult. They may very well be a service company or a product company or an OEM. And some of that language is not embedded into how they think about their products. And then the third thing that they found for success was expertise, internal or external. It was challenging to find that expertise, and it was important from what they said that partnerships were essential to being successful and establishing those internal partnerships and identifying those external partners. And as we think about success and how IoT is changing organizations today, because IoT is really a part of your digital transformation. It should be considered one of the aspects of any company's digital transformation journey. We decided to put together 3 different scenarios conceptually. We wanted to give you examples out there in the marketplace, something that you could see think about how companies are doing it today and what you can leverage internally for yourself. And does this give you some real world examples here? So the 3 real world examples that we have for you are highlighted in front. The first one is what we call your business that leverages OEM products for the service that you provide. Now, this could be a drilling rig operator. This could be a factory where you've got multiple pieces of equipment that you're looking to monitor. You don't necessarily manufacture that equipment. You don't put it together. Another example here is a medical hospital. Recently chatting with an individual that was identifying that medical hospital automatically tags any pieces of equipment that come in so that they can have their own asset management solution for them. That's an IoT endeavor, honestly. And you're trying to leverage the other products that you don't own but are supplied to you, and you're trying to put your solution on top of them. So maybe you fit into that camp. The other one here is you're an OEM directly manufacturing a product, you want to sensorize it, you want to go ahead and enable all of this beautiful connectivity on it and provide your customers more value. This could be a beer keg manufacturer, this could be a lawnmower manufacturer, you could be an industrial pump manufacturer. I think when we conceptualize IoT and what it's doing out here in the marketplace, besides retail and the customer side of things, I think this is where a lot of people picture it. It's used for OEMs. And a lot of OEMs are jumping into it, and not everyone's being successful there because of the organizational challenges. And we'll go ahead and talk about that further. The last one is a little different take on it. You may be an elevator service company, for example. You may be a rental company. You have assets from other people and you're renting them out. You may belong to a dealer network for some OEMs, or you may even be a turf management company. And the idea here is that you're trying to engage your service model. You're trying to leverage data in a way that makes you more efficient, more cost effective, that meets the timelines and the demands of the customers appropriately. So given these 3 scenarios that we have, we'd like to ask you, what category most resembles your IoT use cases out there? Are you a company that leverages other products or multiple OEMs? Are you an OEM? Are you a provider of services? Or none of the above? Maybe you can think of yourself as something else. And if that's so, please go ahead and put that in the chat box. We'd like to hear what other options are there out there. And let's go ahead and see what our results are.
So a lot of OEMs on the call today. I think that's our great majority there. And maybe there's a few folks that have clicked on the none of the above or something else. Haven't seen any of those responses pop up in the chat box yet. Maybe you don't want to share, and that's perfectly fine, but we would be interested to kind of hear how you see yourselves fitting into this space, if you don't fit into one of those three categories that are pretty broad.
All right, moving on.
So in each of these three scenarios, connectivity matters, and it matters in different ways for each of these three scenarios. And they all need to draw value out of an IoT solution, or they wouldn't be doing it in the first place. Let's think about our oil rig operator, a user of multiple OEM equipment. Somebody in this situation, an oil rig operator or a factory, they want to increase operational efficiency. They want to optimize their performance, and they want to increase safety. They've got a lot of people working around these machines, so maybe there are things that they can be doing to drive that safety value out of the equipment information that they have available to them. And there's always the business driver of doing more with less, and that's really all around optimizing performance and increasing operational efficiency. For our OEM manufacturer, our beer keg manufacturer, there's a potential for them to create value by building brand new revenue streams outside of the product that they already are creating today. They've got an opportunity to create more customer stickiness, building that brand a little bit deeper with their customers. And there's a potential to streamline operations. We think about asset management, asset monitoring, especially in a situation with beer kegs where they might be used or they will be used several times. And it may make sense for the manufacturer to know where they are at all times. And so I think that's a great way to think about using IoT to streamline operations. In our elevator service company or any other kind of service company, it makes sense to utilize the value of IoT to spend less on avoidable issues. They can increase their employee efficiency by providing them all of the equipment, data, work instructions, and replacement parts that they need for the job that they'll be doing. Or we could be thinking about enhancing that customer experience. At the end of the day, by providing those technicians with as much information as possible, it's going to make those repairs happen faster for that elevator. And that's going to really enhance that customer experience. So we've got three different scenarios, three different types of companies and services that they provide. So who should drive that IoT initiative? Who should be asking for it if it doesn't exist already? We're calling that the business champion. We think in the case of that oil rig operator, most likely the maintenance and reliability teams are going to be that driver, that business champion that's going to want to get IoT kicked off. For our manufacturers, sales and marketing, I think, is a great business driver for those types of use cases, those uses of the data that we can get through IoT. And then for our service companies, the service teams themselves are going to be the driver because they can see the efficiencies that are going to be coming from the value of that data. But in the end, who's really responsible for creating these solutions? It's everybody. It's every single team in each of those companies are going to be responsible for the execution of that connectivity solution. As we talked about before, IoT is a major part of the digital transformation of a company. And as we said in the first webinar, digital knows no business unit. Everyone needs to be involved.
So what does a successful IoT solution look like? Well, we could go ahead and take a look at it from the normal set of components that everybody's talking about out there, which is sensor devices, communications, big data platforms, value-added AI products, additional applications. But when we think about it, we think that in that maturity side of things, you have to focus on things that really aren't being talked about today. Because successful IoT solution is all about that user experience, that customer impact, or it's even that internal customer impact, that technician impact. It's all about understanding security from the sensor all the way up to the data transmission and the APIs that may be generated and moving around between companies and different platforms. It's about training. If you are a company that offers a service and you're running out and servicing those elevators, for example, you need to be able to train all the technicians. You need to think about that training as you go ahead and start building your product. So they're the end users. ERP integrations, long-term maintenance plan. This is not something that you just turn on and it runs like clockwork all by itself. I liken this very similarly to the beginning of websites for companies. Back in the 1990s, companies would go ahead and put up a website. It was all the new thing to do, the latest craze. They'd put it up and then, hey, there we go. I've got a website. I'm done, right? I'm just going to move on and continue my business the way I went. But unfortunately, businesses realize that having a website is a living, breathing, integral part of their business. As their business matures, as the dynamics change in the world around us, that website needs updated, it needs changed. It has an own lifespan of itself and livingness that needs to be planned for from a resource perspective and a skills perspective. Help desk. That's something else we find companies forget. If you're providing a new service, do you have a help desk to support it? And then lastly, experience and expertise, both on that side. This is a fun sandbox for you to play in. IoT is designed like that. A lot of hackers are playing in this community, put sensors on things. I attend some of the hacker communities for IoT out in the Minneapolis area, and it's very fun to see what they're putting together, such as soil sensors on a garden, or there's an individual who has sensorized his chicken coop, right? He's getting experience and expertise in doing IoT, but there's a lot of companies that are trying to jump into it without taking a step back and saying, what are the small baby steps that we need to actually do to succeed on this? And as we think about, what does it take for success? We're going to position this in a way that says, what are some of the challenges we've noticed with companies executing IoT solutions? We're going to stick with those 3 examples, and Matt and I are going to banter back and forth here and talk about each one of these points in a little bit more depth so that you can get a better picture and relate this to your business. Take a look at it with an objective view and say, what do I think some of the challenges are going to be long-term for me implementing this? If we're thinking about an oil rig, somebody who's using a variety of OEMs equipment that they don't manufacture at the end of the day, they've purchased it, they have a strong reliance on these suppliers. And oftentimes we've heard that I purchase equipment, but the manufacturer of the equipment designs it for one use case. They don't always know my use case at the end of the day, and my use case is very different sometimes than how they've actually designed it to run.
In addition to that, it wouldn't be just rig operators or the folks that are in this scenario, but you think about the factory or the hospital scenario, people are resistant to change. There are a lot of institutional processes and training manuals and things that have been developed to do certain things in certain ways to ensure the quality of the output product or service. And changing those things is a hard-fought battle.
Data transfer is a big challenge in a more remote location area, such as an oil rig out in the middle of the ocean. You have to figure out how am I going to get reliable data if I need to stream it real time. Do I have to look at the edge system, meaning I put all of my IoT analytics and my infrastructure at a localized location, I don't put it in the cloud? Or how do I manage that relationship between the edge to the cloud and provide the real-time information that's needed for decisions? So data transfer is a big issue from an oil rig perspective. Oh, and to note on that, hospitals, they put MRI machines in the very basement of a hospital, and they're electrically insulated very well. Sometimes it can be very challenging to get wireless signals out. And if we're going in with an assumption that it's wireless, that may be the wrong assumption to have.
And moving that room may not be the easiest organizational change to make. A lot of these companies that are in this scenario, the users of multiple OEMs equipment, they may be product companies. They're not set up like a service company. They may not have the infrastructure built in already to support help desk type activities. And I think that's a huge organizational challenge because everybody that implements an IoT solution will become to look more like a service company.
One of the things that we also find as we work with these types of customers is that a lot of their IoT solutions are internal. They're not meant to be customer facing. So for example, in the oil rig scenario, they're not telling their customer who's hired them to go ahead and drill an oil well, they're not giving them all this information about the equipment. It's their own understanding so they can run their operations more efficiently. As a patient, I don't go into an MRI machine wanting to take a look at all the MRI diagnostic reports and say, hey, it's working, right? I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in going in, getting my MRI, coming out, and talking with the doctor about the results. So a lot of the IoT solutions that we see in this scenario is internal, and it's challenging to justify an ROI or even find a way to generate additional revenue on this. The second scenario is the beer keg manufacturer. So you're actually manufacturing a product. Now, this could be an industrial pump. This could be a widget of any types, but it's something that somebody else uses for the operation of whatever they're doing. This could be an auger. This could be a wood chipper. I'm trying to be very broad here in its scope because it really is broad. And I think a beer keg is something that we can all relate to, but also identify that they manufacture these. There is a use case for putting sensors on top of it. And it is a blend of this internal and external facing. They want to know where they are. Customers want to know, hey, when is my beer arriving? It's kind of the UPS model here of asset management. Is my beer here? When did it arrive? Do I have enough? Are you sending something else? So there's external facing IoT value that can be derived along with the internal value that can be derived.
And as Sean mentioned, there's a use case for adding sensors to a beer keg or another similar product. But what is your current customer going to get out of it? They may be interested, in knowing when that's there, but there's a potential that they wouldn't want to pay any extra for that. So how do you really monetize that solution? Maybe there's a new revenue stream you can build. Maybe there's a different customer for that information. Say maybe the brewer of that beer. They may be interested in the sensorized data, the sensor data coming back from those kegs. And I think it's a challenge to think about who might be my new customer, a secondary revenue stream.
As we talk with these OEM companies, we find that they are successful because of their product teams and the engineers that they have designing the equipment. And there is a challenge for them to figure out, well, why is this important? What is the value of the data that's going to be generated off of this? Can I use this, or is this just something that a customer wants? It becomes a challenge for some engineers to say, I just spent 3 months pulling 10 cents off of this piece of equipment, and you want me to put a dollar sensor on it? You're going to make it more expensive. Companies need to start thinking about the difference between how they're looking at their margins and how they're sensorizing that equipment, and how engineers are going to have to rethink how to design for that specifically. The best way is to leverage what you currently have. A lot of pieces of equipment may be connected to a PLC. They're already gathering some data from a control system. Start with what you have, but you have to bring that back around to the engineer so that they're seeing the value of what's being generated at the end of the day, so you can actually design better connected equipment.
And this next point may not be true for all OEMs, but an OEM like a beer keg manufacturer most definitely is not a software company. They're not built like a software company. They're not organized to support a software lifecycle. It'd be very tempting, I think, to lean on an IT department because those guys do software, right? But that IT department is there to support the traditional business, to make sure that the systems that are necessary for manufacture and finance and sales and marketing are all up and running and safe and secure. They are not there to write new software as part of the product and support that software long term. So I think that's a big organizational challenge that a lot of these OEMs are going to face.
And additionally, we talked a little bit about technician training for the oil rig. Well, here it's all about sales training. You have to enable your sales team to go out and start selling on top of the equipment that you have. They need to be able to talk to the value of the customer and saying, if you go ahead and purchase our equipment, we have a premium service, we'll go ahead and monitor that equipment, here's a subscription price, etc., whatever your business revenue model is at the end of the day. So the sales training is vital to making this successful at the end of the day. The third scenario that we have is the maintenance or service company. company providing service for pieces of equipment out there in the marketplace today. This is an elevator service company, for example. Now, when it comes to this, they need to have a little bit longer term vision for the execution. It takes more time to bring everything up to speed so that you can get moving efficiently and effectively.
You know, and these solutions, they cost money. The sensors, the gateways, the cellular connectivity, all of this costs money. It's a pretty heavy investment to ensure that you're collecting the right data to actually gain some value for a maintenance and service company. And it's a great challenge to make sure that you can justify that spend.
And if we think about the city of New York, how many elevators are in New York City? And if I'm going to put an IoT device and a gateway on that so I can collect information and predict when they're going to fail, that's an awful lot of money. Even if it's at $1 a piece, 10 million elevators running around adds up. And companies don't necessarily think about how capital intensive IoT can be. They're just thinking more around the software and the cloud and getting the value out of it. But there's some precursor thinking around what's the hardware cost going to be. Additionally, that short-sightedness on not thinking about the hardware comes from the reliance upon software as the only enabler for IoT. And while software is the tool that we're using, we find that in these maintenance service companies, there needs to be a stronger IT team support. There are currently a lot of internal applications and external applications that need to be designed and developed because it is as much customer facing as it is internal facing.
You know, in our user of multiple OEM equipment earlier, we talked about the resistance to change, and it's no different here. Those technicians are the lifeblood of these maintenance and service companies, and they've been doing the repairs that they've been doing for a long time in very certain ways, and they're going to be resistant to a data-driven workflow to a certain extent. And this is all, it's a great challenge with the core of your business like this. I think this all comes down to having the right education and the value of the data, and then maybe even showing them some feedback. And a different way that IoT data can be used in this sense is actually monitoring what those technicians are doing and utilizing their output as part of a best practices and modeling the way that you're going to train the next generation of service personnel.
And it doesn't help that a lot of the buzz around artificial intelligence and AI applications out there is talking about how it is the job killer. And technicians look at this and saying, am I going to have a job next year? Are you going to automate me? Those are valid concerns that need to be addressed as companies move forward down this IoT journey. With regards to the elevator service company, similar to the oil rig company, you have data transfer challenges. But it's different. If you have 300,000 assets out there, that's going to be a very different data transfer challenge, storage challenge, than if you have 20,000 assets. And you need to be able to think about the scalability for that from a storage perspective and even from a transfer strategy internally.
Mm-hmm. And all these companies have got existing work order management systems or ERP systems that they've got, tweaked and customized to the way that they do their business. And integrating a data-driven workflow or an IoT-driven workflow with these existing systems is a great challenge, just because of the different varieties of systems that are out there and the potential hiccups that there are with talking to them. But it's absolutely important to think about the steps that can be taken to create that seamless experience, to make that IoT layer seem like it's not there, to make everything flow easily, automated, and seamlessly.
Some years ago, I heard a comment from somebody saying the best technology is the one I don't notice. And I continue to agree with that statement. If it's integrated into my life in a way that I don't see it, if I have to bounce between a work order management system and then to an ERP system and then to another system, that's painful. And designing a seamless experience, even with current technology and not doing IoT, can be challenging. And then you're going to bring in this additional element and tack it on. You need to be thinking about that full holistic side of things and strategize with that from the very beginning. Now, the last two are very similar: customer education and the need for sales training. Like the previous one of the OEM, sales training is important. It's a very customer-facing issue here. Whereas the customer education is helping them understand how this service that we are now offering you is going to benefit you in your life. If you are a building owner and you have 20 elevators in your building, you want to be able to get a text alert that says, hey, we have a technician coming by. He's going to look at one of the elevators. We believe it's down. He would rather have people be proactive than reactive on the issues that you're facing. And this takes some customer education to identify the value that you're investing in them at the end of the day. So those are our three scenarios. We hope that gave you some pause for thought, gave you a little bit of ability to reflect upon your organization, your IoT strategy, and where some challenges and hiccups may be in your near future. When it comes to successful IoT as a digital transformation, it really is about organizational readiness. It is more than just hardware. It is more than just the software. It's about the human experience that this is enabling.
We've kind of shown three different scenarios, three different companies, three ways of doing business, and the different challenges that they're facing. But at the end of the day, they really all come back to kind of the same journey, and the same maturity can help them solve all of those challenges at once. We've kept harping on how much of a transformation IoT can be to a business, and that it's a journey or a quest. Every quest needs a leader. And I think that's our first point here for what it takes to actually achieve a successful IoT implementation. You need a leader. You need to appoint a champion for that IoT solution development that's going to be responsible for its success, a single point there. To support that champion, there needs to be an organization built underneath them that has representation from all parts of your business, laterally, so horizontally and vertically. We cannot just include the C-suite here. We need to talk to the C-suite all the way down to the technicians and the people on the floor that are building the devices, if it's a product company, or the folks that are actually sitting down and writing the code. There needs to be representation from all of the different business units and business functions, because everybody is involved in IoT. All of those folks, all of those groups need a say in how the solution is developed, and they all need to understand their group's responsibilities. Security is another thing that we need to think about from start to finish. It needs to be built in at the absolute ground layer to ensure that you're going to have a successful implementation. It cannot be an afterthought. And I think leveraging external IoT expertise and finding the right partner to help you is a great way to achieve success here. Not every organization can support all of the aspects of a connected solution, so finding that right partner that can help plug in where you've got gaps is a great way to do that. And last but definitely not least, you really need to think about what is that user experience going to be that you intend to create. Make sure that that is well vetted and that that is thought about on every step of this journey. So to that point, for leveraging partners to increase your chance of success, not every partner is created equal. We need to find the ones for our business who can really speak both languages. They can bridge that gap between the executives and the IoT experts. Somebody who can actually speak both languages and help create that communication that's going to drive success. You need to focus on running your business. And that's, I think, a great place where a partner can come in and help you drive those IoT initiatives, especially in the places that you've got gaps. But we all can't take away from our day-to-day responsibilities to focus on this. I think finding a partner that's got some experience, that's done this before and knows the pitfalls to help us along that way, I think is a great way to really leverage a partner. And we have to think about this not as a one shot, a moonshot kind of a approach here. We really have to think about this as experience that we can build on. Think about it as laps around a track. Take some baby steps, build on that, maybe make some mistakes and learn from them, but remember to keep building. This isn't something that we can do straight off in the first iteration. And finding a partner that understands that and can help you build those layers of experience, I think, is extremely important. And as Sean mentioned earlier, go ahead.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, IoT has theorists and opinion leaders, and there's lots of great ideas, lots of great thinking around this. But at the end of the day, many ideas look great on paper, but they don't work in practice. Being able to talk with a partner who has actually practiced what's going on and can help identify where the hiccups are and what appropriate timelines are and what appropriate expectations are is vitally important. Additionally, business leaders must trust IoT before they can rely on it to solve mission-critical problems. Don't go out there and anticipate that we're going to pick our flagship product and we're going to sensorize it. That's most likely a recipe for disaster. Too much stress is going to rely on that. Go ahead and find a product that's good, customers that can engage with, and you can identify, can you bring them in to test it on a prototype or a beta? Get that trust going, build up that system and that ecosystem first and foremost. And then lastly, look for experienced vendors who build best practices into their solutions, who've identified them. You want that partnership, you want to leverage their know-how at the end of the day. And ultimately, as you do that, they will help you, reach for the moon by doing these small laps around the track. And as we wind up this webinar, we want to give you the keys to the car, if we can use that phrasing. And as Matt and I thought about this and the experiences we have, these are some of the keys that we think are important for organizational maturity and organizational readiness when it comes to IoT success. First is identifying the right business problem. Pick that champion. Choose the right metrics. Set a launch date. Now, that would be a minimum viable product. And this could be very small, very iterative, but hit that launch date and then go to the next launch date and then slowly, incrementally scale up on that. Understand the limitations of your IT department. That's very important. They are not the be-all, end-all. They are not designed to do everything under the sun. Talk with them, partner with them, understand their strengths and weaknesses. Learn from failure, fix it fast. This is more of the startup approach. Failure is going to happen. How are you ready and enabled to fix it quickly, identify the issues, and move forward? Involve marketing early. They're the people who are also going to champion you, internal and externally. And lastly, pick a partner. Experience matters when it comes to doing IoT. This is still very new and nascent in our world today, and most companies, similar to websites 20 years ago, are trying to figure that out, trying to figure out what skills are necessary, what the budget looks like, how long-term of a strategy do they need to have on this?
And to keep that success rolling, a couple pointers that we have is really to obsess over that customer experience. You need to make sure that what those customers are seeing, what they're getting out of your IoT solution, whether they're internal or external customers, is what they expect out of your brand and is useful to them. Make sure that that experience is forefront in all of your development discussions. They need to be seamless experiences, as we said before. Create the technology that is invisible. Keep pushing for improvement. We've said before, this isn't something you can just put out there and say it's done, I have my IoT. Everything needs to improve. There's always changing needs, changing business needs, and your IoT solution needs to adapt to those. Data isn't enough. Do the math. Really think about what's the value that you're creating and what's the value that you're putting into the hands of your end users. I think that's a great thing to think about. And build a knowledge base. Learn from the mistakes that you've made. Don't make them again. And I think that comes down to having a robust knowledge base for not only your own internal development teams, but for kind of taking this solution to the next step.
And as we've been talking here today, we hope you've had some good thoughts around and good ideas as to how you can move forward with preparing your organization to be ready for an IoT solution. And we wanted to ask the question, with what we've been discussing today, how do you consider your company ready for IoT? Are you extremely ready, somewhat ready, slightly ready? Not at all. So we'll go ahead and open up that poll, and we'll be happy to get an idea of what people think.
Slightly ready, I think, is our clear winner here, and I think that's a great place for people to be, for the majority, because as we found at the beginning, a lot of people are just starting to think about this, getting yourselves ready. We talked earlier about where are people with maybe developing a POC, and that might be about where these folks are, and I think that's great. I think we've got a couple of good questions too coming in as well, so I think maybe we should move on to some of that, Sean.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and recap quickly once again, what are the 5 elements for IoT maturity? From our perspective, it's organizational readiness. It's hardware, network, software, analytics, data consumption, and then lastly, ongoing IoT support and maintenance readiness. So we hope that you've been able to identify those weaknesses that you have, and hopefully identify some of the strengths that you have, because every company has strengths that they can leverage for IoT. And also we hope that you've realized that it's not about the hardware, the software, and the mobile app. At the end of the day, that's the tangible that people see. It's what we want to work with, what we want to interact with, but it's not the full solution when it comes to developing an IoT solution. We do consulting on the IoT side, help companies get ready for that experience and help companies go ahead and bring in the necessary skills and resources. We have an IoT readiness survey. We're happy to go ahead and send out that link to everybody who participated today. It'll be up here in the next week. And it's simple 7 questions to kind of benchmark you and where you fit and get an idea of, are you alone in the world? Are you struggling with these challenges by yourself, or are other people also struggling with these challenges? And this is a part of an assessment that we have, a 45-question assessment to help companies identify and start talking a similar language as they go down this digital transformation of IoT. And back to Matt's point here, we've got some good questions that have been come up. Now, one of those questions is, how do we do not have the infrastructure to maintain and update the IoT product and software. How would you recommend we get this support? Matt, what are your thoughts?
I think as we talked about just about 5 minutes ago, it's finding that right partner that's got best practices built, that can sit down with you, understand the needs from that ongoing support and maintenance perspective, and really working with a partner to get that kicked off, either so that that's something that they could do long term or help you build a team to do that.
And on the flip side, how do you help your organization understand what is necessary to support and maintain this? This is not something that we just pull off the shelf and we purchase today. This is digital transformation. And using phrases like digital transformation and that IoT is a part of it should be able to help you align with other digital transformation efforts that your company is going through today. And being able to identify the right questions and figure out, how do I educate leadership appropriately so that they understand we have weaknesses in our infrastructure. And it is vitally important to either partner, as Matt was mentioning, or to go ahead and supply that internally for the long-term viability of an IoT product.
we've got a question. What are the three most important things I should consider when defining an IoT vision for my organization? So I don't know how you'd answer this, Sean, but I think it really goes down to those three most important things would be, number one, defining that problem that you want to solve with IoT. As we've talked about today, making sure that you've got your organization built to support that from the technology perspective and that long-term support, and making sure that customer experience is as strong as it needs to be. And number three, can you really make money from it? And I think those are the three things that really go into a connectivity strategy or an IoT connected equipment strategy.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Matt, on that side. That last one, monetization, is a very interesting and challenging thing that companies are facing today, because the investment, let's say I put 80,000 pieces of hardware out there and I'm monitoring 80,000 assets at even $10 an asset, that's $800,000. That's just the hardware. That's not talking about all the software, the licensing costs, all the resources that you're applying to that. It can become very intensive when it gets to the monetary requirements. And so how do you justify and identify an ROI? And that ROI could be done from a variety of perspectives, but at the end of the day, that has to be something that's aligned with your IoT vision. This isn't just about connecting equipment. This is about the human experience. This is about solving a real world problem and then taking that information and leveraging it and communicating the answer to that real world problem.
Yep. Another question I'm seeing pop up here is, how can I ensure that my connected product is capturing the right data?
That's a good question. How do you know it's capturing the right data? The business questions you're asking today may not be the business questions you need answers for tomorrow, or you may be answering very new questions tomorrow. And when it comes to a pure product perspective, if you've got a compressor on your piece of equipment that you're looking at, vibration analysis is important. There are some other things that you can do, from temperature readings, climate readings, and when it comes to driving value, third-party, I say third-party, but weather is very important. You got to remember, IBM bought the Weather Channel for a reason. They bought it for data. And that is integrated into a variety of the solutions that they have out there in the marketplace today. So, how do you know what to pick? It's a trial and error. We typically approach it from the physics-based perspective first. We know a lot about the world. We start sensorizing what we understand about the world and our business challenges. And then we step back and saying, is it answering those problems I was intending it to answer? And it may very well bring up new questions for us, and we have to go ahead and resensorize things. It's a part of this evolution of laps around the track.
Right. And I think, to put it simply, I'd argue that if you have analytics that are giving you the insights that you expect and you trust and you understand from that data, you're collecting the right data. If that's not happening, it's time to reevaluate your data collection strategy.
And we'll finish up with one more question. Our sales team is not technically sophisticated. How do we sell our IoT service if our salespeople can't be taught to make the proper pitch to our customers? That's a great question. When it comes to salespeople, I wouldn't worry as much on the technical side of things. I would focus on what your company has been doing good and teach them and train them on the added value of the service.
Value.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, we can all talk about rocket science, how to get a rocket to the moon. Theoretically, that makes sense. All the technical side of things, that we don't need to know, and particularly salespeople don't need to know that. If you're in more of a technical field, you might want to start looking at how you can leverage one person to support 5 to 6 different salespeople from a technical perspective. So when they go out, you're bringing that other person, that more technical resource. That's more of a software approach to selling, and at some level, you're selling software with IoT. You may have to figure out how to restructure your sales organization to support that. You may have customers that are more technically inclined. Maybe it's creating technical white papers that explain more of the solution, and your salespeople are able to hand that out and to discuss that later. It's a very good question. It's a question that's cropping up for many companies today as they're saying, my salespeople aren't technical, but this is what I want to be selling. This is where I see the future at. How do I go ahead and bring them in from a non-technical perspective? Matt, your thoughts?
Another great example of how IoT is touching every different business function that a company's got, because those sales folks need to have that education on the value of IoT and what their responsibility is to the company to get that solution out there in front of their customers.
So we're very grateful for all of you to have participated with us today. We have one more webinar in this three-part series coming up. This will be on January 10th, and we'll talk more about leveraging monetization around your IoT solution. How do you increase that return on investment, and what does it look like? And we'll provide you a couple different scenarios again on that side of things. So thank you very much for participating. It's been a pleasure to have you all as participants on there, and we sincerely hope that you've been able to glean something important and of value through this conversation we've had today. And you're always welcome to reach out to us.